Hello. As a quick recap of where we are in the series, in the previous video we calculated that as a couple we currently need an annual income of about £35,000. Based on that figure, we worked out that we would need a starting pot of roughly 165,000 at 67 to give us equal buying power for the 20-year retirement, and that was assuming full state pensions kicked in to cover the rest of the costs. Now, obviously, that 165,000 is in today's money. And as I'm only in my mid-40s, regardless of how much older I might look on this camera, that 165,000 target is still around 20 years away from being drawn down. So today, I want to shift the goalposts. What if we don't wait until we're 67? What does the maths look like if we want to make the jump 10 years earlier and retire at 57? To keep this scenario clean and workable, we need to establish a few core assumptions. Both my partner and I will stop work at exactly the same time and likely receive the full state pensions at 67, even though officially state pension age will likely be 68 by then. The portfolio is going to sit entirely in a stocks and shares ISA wrapper, and that's to eliminate tax complications. We're assuming a net growth of 5% a year. Our yearly spending budget will increase by 2.8% to maintain our actual buying power. Since we already calculated the 165,000 figure that covers us from 67 onwards, we can put that to one side for a moment and focus purely on the 10-year gap between 57 and 67. If we did ultra simple back of the napkin math, you'd say 35,000 over 10 years is 350,000. But we can't just multiply, because we have to account for the annual budget increases on one side and the compound interest the remaining balance makes on the other. So I'll be using the calculator site's compound interest calculator. And once you load it up, you'll come to the normal login screen. I'll change it to pounds. Interest rate, like I said, will be at 5%. We're going over 10 years. And the withdrawals at 35,000 a year. And we'll increase that to counter the inflation at 2.8%. Now, because I already know the figure, it's 302,000. And as you can see, after the 10 years, the pot is basically back down to zero. By plugging in the 5% growth and 2.8% inflation figures into a compound calculator, the actual cost to fund the 10-year bridge comes out to roughly 302,000. Add in our first year's 35 withdrawal up front, and we need approximately 337,000 at 57 to cover the first 10 years. Now, our napkin math would say simply, we just add the 337 bridge to our 165 age 67 pot, right? Unfortunately, it's not quite that straightforward. That 165,000 target was calculated in today's terms. By the time we actually reach the age of 57, that 165 pot would be sitting 10 years further into the future. To make sure that the age 67 pot retains its original purchasing power, we adjust its growth downwards by the inflation rate. That leaves us with a real net growth target of about 2.2%. Now, to work out the 165, we've obviously got no withdrawals. So we'll adjust the net growth rate to 2.2%. To 2.2%. When you compound the 165,000 forward by 10 years at 2.2%, that target pot grows from 165 to 205,000. So at 57, our true combined requirement is 337,000 for the 10-year bridge, and we've got to add the 205,000 for the 67 onwards. That equals 542,000. Since age 57 is still over 10 years away for me, we have to adjust that 542,000 target one more time back to where I sit now. Compounding that requirement backwards gives us the exact portfolio size required today to enable a retirement in 10 years. Now, the depressing part is that 697,000 isn't a future goal to gradually save up to. That is the number I would need sitting in my account right now to guarantee I could walk away in 10 years without adding another penny. It feels like a massive hill to climb. Before we throw in the towel and continue to work multiple more years, let's inject a bit of reality into this. These figures are intentionally conservative, almost pessimistic, to give us a super high probability of success. In real life, market returns aren't static, and neither are the spending habits. Here are a few levers that can change the picture dramatically. If we ring fence an emergency pot of, say, 2 years worth of expenses, about 70 grand, we shield ourselves from sequence of returns risk during market downturns. Having that safety net allows us to assume a slightly higher long-term growth rate on our initial investments. A slight bump in return assumptions can instantly shrink that 10-year bridge requirement from 340,000 down to 290,000. Our spending won't stay flat. Statistically, healthy life expectancy sits in the early to mid 60s. We're far more likely to spend aggressively in our go-go 50s and 60s and naturally slow down our spending in our 70s and 80s. That 35,000 annual budget included plenty of discretionary buffer. Simply cutting 10 or 20%, like dropping down to a single car once neither of us commutes, drops that baseline requirement significantly. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to calculate isn't just an abstract milestone. It's the exact number needed to silence that background financial anxiety and comfortably make that jump. Of course, real life gets complicated. We can't permanently ignore income tax, the capital gains tax outside the wrappers, and how private workplace pensions or SIPs integrate alongside the ISAs. This leads directly to the core challenge of modern UK retirement planning. How do we sequence our withdrawals across different accounts to reduce the tax burden and keep much of our money as possible? That's exactly what I want to dive into in coming videos. If you found this breakdown helpful, give a like, drop your thoughts or your own bridge calculations in the comments below. Hit subscribe and follow the journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.